Renowned evolution author and spokesperson Richard Dawkins makes a telling statement on his own website. Listen to this quote: "Faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and to evaluate evidence," end quote. Of course, the faith he is talking about would be biblical faith, in particular, Christian faith. Listen to what he says, though. Faith is the great cop-out. It's a great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. So, if evolution's biggest and most famous guru says that faith is the great cop-out and that it evades evidence, then let us ask the obvious question. Is fish to man Darwinian evolution? Is it mostly faith? Oh, the evolutionist quickly would say, well, of course not. It's scientifically settled fact. Oh, but I would argue, and I can prove, that fish to men evolution is mostly just blind faith. That is, simply trusting what someone else tells you, declaring that it's fact, but not able to produce hard evidence for what they have told you. Now, evolutionists tell us that they have tons of evidence for fish-to-man evolution, Darwinian evolution. But be careful how you throw that word evidence around, I would say to the evolutionist. Here's my challenge, Mr. Evolutionist. Give me one solitary piece of fish-to-man evolution evidence that does not require exercising faith statements. In other words, you can't use the statements millions of years ago or billions of years ago, because we cannot and have not proven those amounts of times. Those are speculations. They are statements of faith. So if you're going to give me evidence for fish-to-man evolution, you cannot use faith statements. Millions of years, billions of years, or we believe, or it is speculated, or it might be, or it is possible that, or more than likely, or it would seem that, or probably. You see, evolution articles are filled with these faith statements passed off as evidence. And they're not. These are all matters of faith and speculation. So when I ask you to give me one piece of fish-to-man evolution evidence that does not require exercising faith and using faith statements, I'm talking about hard scientific method evidence, real science. Give me 100% conclusive evidence that Darwinian evolution is observable, demonstrated, repeatable, and falsifiable, etc. I mean, that's scientific method evidence. Please give me one piece of fish-to-man evolution scientific method evidence. Give me one piece of evidence that you have that fits scientific method, that one kind of life evolves into another completely different kind of life, like fish eventually to men. Any examples of Darwinian evolution, macroevolution? I'm not talking about stuffed statues in a museum, and I'm not talking about artist renditions in a textbook. Please don't tell me the fossil records prove evolution, because they absolutely do not. The closest that evolution can ever come in backing up that claim is by declaring, well, look at the similarities between fossil kinds. Look at the similarities of monkey fossils and fossils of men, for example. They're so similar, obviously one can see the evolution process in the fossils. Well, the problem is that is not proof for evolution any more than looking at a microwave oven and a television set side by side and saying, look how similar they look. Obviously, the TV used to be a microwave. It's all nonsensical. A third grader can see through that logic. The fact is that there are millions of missing links in the fossil record, but not one piece of fossil evidence that proves that men came from monkeys, that came from ancient primates, that came from reptiles, that came from amphibians, that came from fish, that came from worms, that came from a sponge, that came from a multicelled organism, that came from a single-celled organism, that came from a magical sludge pond of accidental chemical conflagrations billions of years ago. Where did I get that story, you ask? Well, it's in every evolution origins textbook in the world. Sounds like a whole lot of faith to me. Sounds like pure blind faith. Actually, it sounds like a magical fairy tale. Now, Mr. Evolutionist, in answering my question, to provide one piece of hardcore scientific method observable evidence to prove fish to men evolution, are you really going to point to viruses and the changes and mutations that occur to them, and to bacteria, and to the finches on the Galapagos Islands? All of these are examples of microevolution, or adaptation of species. It's no accident that evolutionists have over a dozen definitions of species, but the observable, demonstrated, repeated, falsifiable fact is that viruses always remain viruses, bacteria always remain bacteria, finches always remain finches, dogs always remain dogs, horses remain horses, cats remain cats, etc., regardless of the microevolution changes that can occur within those species. And there is no scientific method evidence that exists anywhere that a virus ever became anything else other than a virus. And the very latest DNA scientific method evidence indicates that man has always been man. Chimps have always been chimps, and that there are definitive genetic locks within the DNA structures between different kinds of living things. One kind of living thing cannot magically become another kind of living thing, regardless of how much time and pixie dust that you sprinkle over it. So, Mr. Evolution Scientist, let me ask you this. Do you believe in intelligent design? Well, of course not, you say. Well, let's do an experiment. Mr. Evolution Scientist, can you manufacture for me a blade of grass? That should be simple enough. A blade of grass. Can you manufacture it? As a matter of fact, has that ever been done? And by the way, let's don't just manufacture a blade of grass, because the grass comes from something else. It comes from a seed. So let's manufacture from nothing, which is what evolution and or intelligent design has done. Let's manufacture a grass seed first, from nothing, and then let that seed bring forth the living grass. Can you please do that for me? Has anyone ever done it? Yet you are intelligent. You possess untold technological prowess, but you can't do it. You cannot manufacture a gnat or a housefly from nothing. You cannot do it. Because all of these things possess life, the exclusive domain of our Creator, our intelligent designer. With all of your intelligence and all of your technology combined, you cannot manufacture a single blade of grass, much less a grass seed. Yet you so desperately want me to believe that a big explosion of nothing with no intelligence created a seed that created a blade of grass and 20+ million other species of life, including their systems and their subsystems and their sub-subsystems and their quantum particles of the atomic structure of each molecule of those systems, yet we can't make any of that from nothing. With all of our intelligence, all of our technology, with all of our wishing it to be so, you cannot manufacture from nothing, not one particle. You really want us to believe in your magic sludge pond? Your world of magic pixie dust? Blind faith statements? Listen to this declaration from Live Science. Quote, "But natural selection is capable of so much. Given enough time and enough accumulated changes," there are those faith statements, "natural selection can create," really? Where? How? When? Where's the evidence? Natural selection can create entirely new species. It can turn dinosaurs into birds. Now that's not new species, that's new kinds. See how they switch definitions so quickly? Natural selection can turn dinosaurs into birds, apes into humans, and amphibious mammals into whales. End quote. From livescience.com. That's right. The magic of evolution, with all of its elements of blatant statements of raw, blind faith. There's very little raw science involved with Darwinian evolution, fish to men evolution. Evolution is blind faith. Science cannot tell us in any observable, repeatable, and falsifiable way what happened in the very, very beginning. In other words, evolution, macroevolution, fish to men evolution, Darwinian evolution, is not scientific method science. It is not settled science. In other words, much of it is not even science at all. It is blind faith. Now, what was it that Richard Dawkins told us about faith? Quote, "Faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and to evaluate evidence." Yes, Mr. Dawkins, you are right. Wow. Once again, condemned by your own words, and might I add, by your own faith.